Joe, what's up, man? It's been a couple of years, man. We did a podcast. I want to say I should have looked. It's been probably 4 years or more. But it's good to finally connect again.
It's awesome to connect. I'm always excited when there's somebody willing to talk to me because nobody in my house wants to talk to me. My kids think I'm an idiot at times. Like my boys wrestle, my daughters play soccer. I did neither. So when I'm pushing them, even this morning, and now my boys, now they beat me up. So I'm
How
like
old are they?
16 and 14, and
Yeah,
I'm no longer able to muscle through. Yeah, I just can't win. So, and then my
that's
wife's
funny.
tougher than me. My dog's even tougher than I am. So,
I've got four kids. My oldest is 13 and he's hit puberty or starting to, and he's almost as tall as I am. He's already wearing my shoes. And he's always, I'm going to be able to take you, Dad. I'm like, nah, you'll never be able to take me. But the only thing I've been able to do to make sure I stay out ahead of it is train jujitsu, which relies, of course, less on strength and more of just cunning, that old man strength I'm going to need to acquire in order to keep up with the kid.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, man. So, well, you actually hit on something I wanted to talk with you about today. So let's just jump right into it. I know a little bit about your interaction with your kids, the way that you push and motivate and inspire them and lead as a father to some degree. I've done Spartan races. I did the Spartan Agogi, and I know a little bit about that. With the way that you push your kids, have you ever received any sort of bumping up against or frustrations where they get discouraged or they get rebellious in nature because of how hard you push?
Well, it's funny. I don't even know if you know this or not, but the rebellion that we're going to talk about here, not only from my kids, but from the outside world, was the impetus. I wrote a book that came out probably 3 months ago, 3 months ago, called, I don't know if you know it or not, called The 10 Rules of Resilience. You got it. Cool.
Yep, got it
So,
right here.
so yeah. So the reason that book came about was for the exact question you asked. Folks in the neighborhood were driving by while I was having the kids carry kettlebells, I don't know, a mile and a half. And this woman stopped and she got out and started yelling and wanted to know if the kids were okay. And I wasn't going to get in a fight, right? Because that would have been disrespectful. But I was trying to be as nice as I could. And, ma'am, they're my kids. Is he hurting you in any way? Do you need water? And I realized, it's not really her fault because she hasn't seen a child on a sidewalk in probably a decade. She hasn't seen a child on a sidewalk carrying a kettlebell ever, right? And so like we just don't see kids outside anymore.
Right.
And so this was like a foreign animal walking around, and then internally, that's external, and that happens everywhere. And I got people giving my kids cookies, and I'm scratching my head. Why did you just offer my kid a cookie? I'm in the middle of skiing with we don't need cookies. Like, I don't
Right.
understand. So lots
Right.
of outside influence that's bizarre to say the least. And then internally, I was pushing my oldest son really hard during COVID. I used the opportunity. We did a couple of things. I know folks are going to be jealous of this because when I reflect back, it was awesome. But during COVID, we went to the farm for the first 100 days when the country got shut down, and we hiked the mountain in the backyard on the farm every day for 100 days straight, which was awesome. I can't even imagine another time in our lives where we would get to do that. So that was awesome. We worked out every single day, and my kids did live workouts. My little daughter got literally millions of views doing live workouts where she got to lead classes.
Very
Um,
cool.
so yeah, so that was amazing. And then from there, I said, you know what? We're gonna go on a tear with wrestling. My wife did it with soccer with the girls. I did it with wrestling with the boys. And because wrestlers are pretty right wing conservative folks, all the clubs were still open, no masks. I know people listening are going to say, "Oh, Joe, you're so irresponsible." But my feeling, whether it was
Not
right
too
or
many
wrong,
people listening to this. You'll be all right on this one.
yeah. So my feeling with it was this, and I said it very early on, and I got slaughtered on social media. This is a virus that you're not going to be able to run from. Like I don't understand. Like my feeling was, let's just get it over with. And Now that we know what we know, certainly if you were over 65 years old, whatever, or you had pre-existing conditions, you should protect the hell out of those people. But
Hmm.
otherwise, let's just let it rip through the country as quickly as we can. That was my feeling, whether right or wrong. That was what I, and so when I found out all these wrestling rooms were open and there were still tournaments going on, oh my God, we jumped in our van and we wrestled twice a night. We went to every single tournament in the country. I zip zagged through the country, and and so it was awesome, right? Again, spending all that time with my family, but then it was hard on my oldest son reflecting back. And there was a moment, there was one night where he was just like out of it. And he was like, oh,
Mm.
I don't feel like wrestling. It was like our third practice that day or something. And I realized looking back that I just became a psycho. Like, give the kid a break. Like, but I didn't. I was like, what the hell? We're already here. We drove an hour. Your brother's out there. And, it was stupid on my part. And I pushed him pretty hard only later that night to finally just have a talk with him, which was awesome. That said, like, hey man, I love you. We had just a real emotional moment together. And I just have to check myself because not that I'm living vicariously through them. I want, like we all parents do, I want the best for them. And I'm a psycho. Everybody knows I'm a maniac.
I do know
And
that
so like if we
firsthand,
have,
actually.
yeah, if there's a moment where we're doing nothing, like we should be doing something. Like, what are you guys doing right now? Let's go wrestle. Let's do this. Let's right. Let's learn something. How come you're not doing Mandarin? So there was that day where it highlighted my insanity, and I pushed a little too hard, and I've had to just keep it in check. It doesn't appear that I've done it again or could do it again because now school is back, life is back. That was a moment in time where I had like unfettered access 24 hours a day to the kid, and we were just like on it. Um, so anyway, I don't know if I answered the question well or not, but it was a good chance for me to look in the mirror and say, I went too far that day, and probably for a whole part of the year.
I'm glad you said that, but even still, and I think you'd agree that the greater risk is we don't go far enough. That's the greater risk. Is not that we go too far. It's that we don't push hard enough. We have helicopter parenting. You talk about quite about in the book about bubble wrapping our kids, and you see it. We just got back from a vacation, and it was like this all inclusive, amazing trip in Mexico. And I just thought, man, we've gotten fat and lazy and pathetic over these past 7 days. But that seems to be what I think most of society does, 365 days a year, not 7 days a year.
Well, you just gave me a great idea. You and I have just invented a term on this podcast right here. We're going to call it B1 bombing parenting.
There
B1
you
bomber
go.
parenting, right? Where you purposely drop bombs in their way and obstacles and just make their life much harder than it otherwise would be. And that's what I'm a believer in because my feeling is they're going to have to get up early when we're not around. They're going to have to face, like, anytime my kids are complaining about something, I'm like, come to the office. Like, you know what I'm dealing with? I got to make payroll. I got shit going on in the middle of a desert in Abu Dhabi. It's all like, I got so much stuff I'm dealing with. You're complaining about what?
Mm.
You know what I mean? So we need to get them to, I walk around this office sometimes, I'm thinking, gee, am I preparing them enough for what they would have to do when I'm not around? My dad pushed me really hard, and my mom pushed me hard in a different direction with health and wellness. And at the time, they weren't making any friends with me. But later in life, they're both gone. I look back and I'm like, thank God. You know what? They could have even pushed harder,
Mm.
right? Like, how come they didn't make me learn another language? How come they didn't? You don't want to hear it at the time when you're 14 or 15 or like, but when you're 30 something years old, you're like, oh, I get it now. And then when you have kids, you're like, oh, I really get it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'm at, with my kids. I've got four. And if we take the path of least resistance, the path that everybody else wants us to take, like you said, they'll be handing out cookies and everything else. But I think you did a really good job in this book about outlining just 10, well, you call them rules, factors, whatever you want to call them, that are going to help you lead your children more effectively in this weak culture that we live in today.
Do you see? The other day I posted. Somebody tipped me off that the progressives had come up with this idea of a 4-day work week, and I tried to be as um, politically correct as I could be. And I said, look, I don't care what political affiliation you have. I don't care what religious beliefs you have. Like, as long as you're a good person. But like, just think about this, guys. The number one motivator for our species is the avoidance of discomfort. We will avoid discomfort at all costs, subconsciously, consciously. We wake up in the morning to work out. All of a sudden, we're making coffee and trying to read news. The only reason we're making coffee and trying to read news is because our bodies and minds are saying, don't do it. Don't go work out. It's too hard, right? And so we just take the easy route any chance we get. And if you don't believe me, wake up at 5 a.m. in New York City, a city of 8 million people, go to Central Park, a beautiful park, on a sunny day, sunny morning, that's, a warm day, and tell me how many people are out there. Are 8 million people out there working out? No, there's about 8 if you're lucky. And so the point is, we all look to avoid discomfort. So I said, these progressives are coming out with this idea of a 4-day work week. Why not 3-day? Why don't we just work 1 day?
Or
right?
none.
Or none. Why do we have to work at all? I mean, think about all the time we could spend with our families. I would love it. You would love it, right? We could exercise more. We could do more Spartan races. But the reality is, when I lived all over the world. I've lived in Japan. I've lived in China. I've lived in Vancouver, Singapore, everywhere. We're in 45 countries. And I'm just thinking about my trip in China, for example, when I was there, and I'm going to see these big companies with thousands of employees, and I'm seeing people sleep at their desks. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I go to the manager, what's going on here? Oh, those are the folks that work 20 hours straight. We let them nap for 15 minutes.
Jeez.
Oh, what are those? I'm not even kidding. What are those tents in the corner over there? Oh, those are the folks that stay 3 days in a row. We let them sleep in tents. And so I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but what I'm saying is, how do you expect this country, check this out, how do you expect this country to compete with that? Last week, I'm leaving this office, and there's a 13-year-old Chinese kid trying to come in the office. And I say, hi, could I help you? And he says, yeah, I'm looking for Spartan. This is Joe. Oh, Mr. Sena, I got my book. I got your book. I would love to get it signed. I came here from China. I did a race in China, and it changed my life. And so my mom was willing. We saved up money, and we flew here to Boston.
Whoa.
And so the kid is articulate. The kid was unbelievable. He's going to go to a private school here in Boston. The mother basically sacrificed her whole life to get this to happen. And I'm like, my kids don't have a chance competing with this kid.
Yeah.
So you want a 4-day work week or a 3-day work week? Good luck. I mean, let me know how it goes 50 years from now. Let's look back and see what we look like.
Well, not even, I mean, yes, of course, but not to mention just the level of, I don't know if it's dissatisfaction, but I find the most value in my life when I am working. And that doesn't mean I'm here slaving away in front of a computer. That might be part of it. Maybe I'm cranking out words to write a book or doing a podcast like this. But even when I'm with my kids and we're at the gym or walking around the property and I'm working hard towards a meaningful pursuit. But I think much of culture today is trying to drive us into a place of comfort. And it sounds really enticing. Man, I can't go to the beach for an hour without being bored. I bring a shovel to the beach because if I don't have a shovel and I don't dig a hole and play king of the hole with my kids, I'll lose my damn mind. I don't know how these people do it.
Well, you and I would be one of the 5 in Central Park at 5 a.m., right? There's a few of us, and that doesn't make us right or wrong. People say, Joe, you got to stop and smell the roses. I say, that's cool, but who's going to fertilize them, trim them, take care of them? Because if everybody's smelling them, there would be no roses.
Good call.
So, and then I see the comments when I posted this thing about the 4-day work week. Funny enough, because I didn't expect it from the Spartan, user base, But funny enough, 99% of the responses are like, Joe, you're out of touch with reality. Think about if it was a 4-day work week, people would have more time to do Spartan races. They'd have more time with their kids. What are you like expecting to put 13-year-olds in coal mines? My response was, I've been working like 100 hours a week since I'm 13 years old. And then you
Mm-hmm.
get, oh, I'd like to see that. That means you're only sleeping a few hours a night. Well, clearly you don't know me because like you, I don't go to the beach without a shovel. I really don't. So I'm with you. And but we're not going to get the rest of the world to live that way. They're just not going to, they're not going to do it. By the
Well,
way, I got a question for you before then keep that thought. On the fifth day, when we're supposedly going to spend all this time with our families, are our kids in school or are they going a 4-day school week also? How's that work?
yeah, actually what I think is they'd love to have our kids 24/7. So the kids are going to be at school. We're going to be out doing our thing, hoping Big Daddy government takes care of our kids in a way that's going to be best and most effective for them. And we know it isn't, obviously.
I'm distraught over the whole thing. We're moving to Florida. We're going down to
Are you
Florida
really? Yeah.
January 2nd. We're moving to Florida and I'm hoping, and then when I saw this news, I was like, man, I got to move to another country again. Because I just, for me, selfishly, and probably for you, I want to be around, I just like being around people that are getting after it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me drive even harder.
Yeah, I do know. And I was thinking about that. My son and I were actually talking about peer pressure. We were driving down the road the other day and he does some powerlifting. His coach, Sean Moore, opened the gym for these young men. And I said, hey, this is going to be awesome. You get to go. Coach wasn't going to be there, but I'm like, open gym, you get to go. I'm like, do you have your workout? What are you doing? He's like, oh, he programmed a workout for me. So I just do that. I'm like, awesome. We get there and I'm like, what time did he say? He's like, he told me to be here at 9. I'm like, well, okay, it's a little after 9. Like, where's everybody at? He's like, I don't know. Just drop me off, Dad. I'll go work out. I'm like, nobody's here. He's like, I'll go work out. So I dropped him off and I had to run some other errands. I drove by because he's 13. I'm going to check on him. He's by himself. I'm going to check on him. So I drove by. I'm not going to bother him. He's with his friends working out. Not another car there. And I'm like, man, this is strange. I go pick him up and I'm like, hey, how was the workout? He's like, oh, it was awesome. I got a good workout in. I did this and this and this and this. I'm like, oh, who'd you work with? He's like, nobody. I'm like, are you kidding me? Nobody came? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, didn't he tell the other boys? He's like, yeah, he told us all together. I'm like, you were the only one there? He says, yes, I was. And this goes to what you were saying about like, we're not going to convince the world, but it also creates some amazing opportunities if we can develop this in our children because they're going to be kings and queens in this universe.
Oh my God. Think about the competition is so easy to beat these days. My 14-year-old just turned 14. He won the mile at school. And I'm thinking, he's not really that fast. Like, I don't, but it's because everybody else is so slow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's hard, it's frustrating, but again, I think that just gives us the opportunity to really instill this. But the challenge I have is they're just bombarded with school and with teachers and with social media and all sorts of, entertainers and musicians that are promoting this mediocrity. How do you make sure that yours is the loudest voice with regards to everything else you have to contend with?
Well, actually, I want your help on this. I don't even know what it's called, but we came up with an anti-Spartan handle on social media because we figured if you can't beat them, join them. So you should help me do this. We're going to push mediocrity because I'm hoping that by pushing mediocrity and just being so black, today we should all eat 12 donuts. No one should exercise. No exercise. We're on strike from exercise. Maybe it would be so ridiculous that it'll wake people up.
Yeah,
You know what I
interesting.
mean?
Yeah, sure.
So the anti Spartan channel and listen, in the 1970s, my mother found yoga, meditation. She became a vegan, and she basically got thrown out of our house. I mean, my parents got divorced. I didn't want any part of that nonsense and branch sandwiches, and I wanted eggplant parm. My sister didn't want any part of it. My dad got us an account at a Chinese restaurant so we could eat normal food. But I watched her from the 70s through the 90s. I watched her fight the whole world, including her own family, because she believed that this was the right way. This would help you live longer, a healthier life. And so I recognized that I'm just going to face this resistance. Like, I'll tell you what, this morning, I'll show you this video. I had to go to the doctor this morning. My ears have been ringing for 18 months.
Dang.
I had a cold 18 months ago. It's probably COVID. The first time, I think I got COVID like 2 or 3 times. And my ears have been ringing. And so I went to the doctor. I'm trying to get my friggin' ears to stop ringing. And I'm going to play this for you. I'm in the doctor's office. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. I can't hear him though.
So he's basically in his lab coat, for those watching or listening. He's in his lab coat. He's got his stethoscope on. And we're talking, and he doesn't know what Spartan is. He doesn't know Tough Mudder or anything. And all my vitals, knock on wood, everything's perfect. And he's like, hey, I got a question for you. I want to be able to run 2 miles. So here's this doctor asking me, I got this whole list of questions from a doctor. And I'm like, oh my God, what has the world come to when doctors are asking me how to get healthy?
Yeah, it's a wild time, man. It really, but that goes back to what you were saying and what we were talking about with, the school wanting our kids 24/7. They want to give out these degrees and these credentials, which are basically appeals to authority that I don't recognize. Like if a doctor can't run 2 miles and he's asking you, I can't acknowledge him as a health expert. You see some of these health ministers in foreign countries, and they're some of the most disgusting, unhealthy people that you'd ever seen. It's like, this is the person that we want to have us giving health advice.
Well, I'll even go one further. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I was saying this earlier today. I was saying, if you're on social media and you're taking a stand on something, even you or you're taking a stand on something, you really need to we all need to look in the mirror and say, do we really know what we're talking about? Because our species, just like you and I, in the 1960s and 70s, was recommending baby oil and mirrors and laying in sun. It was recommending Marlboro cigarettes. It was recommending powdered baby food over breast milk. Like, we are a bunch of idiots. So to your point, doctors, overweight, smoking, giving it we got to get our shit together.
Well, one of the things that you talk about in the book is this concept that discipline breeds responsibility. And I think there's a direct correlation, but I'd love for you to talk about that, because I think generally when people look at discipline, they think of, I have to get up at 5. I have to do this thing I don't want to do. And also they don't look at responsibility as something all that significant either. But I look at it and think, well, responsibility gives you meaning, right? As a father, I'm responsible for my 4 children. That gives me meaning and purpose. As a business owner, I'm responsible for running this efficiently and effectively so I can continue to serve my clients and those people who are tuned into what we're doing. I find meaning in that. But I think generally people have some negative connotation about both discipline and responsibility.
You know why? Because of what I said earlier. We like to avoid anything uncomfortable at all costs. Discipline is uncomfortable. Responsibility is uncomfortable. You're in charge of something or someone when you're responsible, right? If you're disciplined, you're getting up whatever those things are you're disciplined about, you're on it. You're not taking the cookie. You're not taking the easy way. And I don't know. I found that when I got more organized and more disciplined, I became a lot more responsible, not only for myself, not only being more responsible as a human being, but for those around me, for my business, like you suggested. And well, how do I get more disciplined, Joe? How do I get more? Well, it starts just with starting. You just take that first step, and you don't have to take on the whole world at once. If we're talking about fitness or early mornings, it could just be like, hey, I'm going to walk a quarter mile every morning at 5, whatever the thing is. And then tell everybody you know that you're going to do
Hmm.
it. And make sure you post that picture every day that you did it. Because if you tell everybody and you're held accountable just because you'd be embarrassed if you don't do it, right? You've told everybody. And then you start narrating that that's who you are rather than how many people do you know that, well, I'm not like that. I don't wake up early.
Yes.
Again, that's just a cop out. Well, stop saying that. Start saying that this is who you are instead of that is who you are. And if you do that and you start to become more disciplined, well, you gain momentum. And then before you know it, you're disciplined in many areas of your life. And before you know it, people are looking up to you and they're following you. And then you're feeling responsible for them. I feel responsible for the Spartan community around the globe. I feel responsible to motivate them, to get them going. And then I really have to be disciplined about who I am and what I do because that's the persona, that's the job I took on. I mean, I think about Shackleton, right? That great story,
Mm.
that explorer who goes out and gets stuck in the ice in his boat for 2 years with his men. 2 years they're stuck in the ice. He does not lose a man. Talk about discipline. Talk about being responsible. He then throws on his pack with one of the guys and they fight their way out. They hike out. They don't know if they're going to make it or not so that they can go get help after 2 years of being stuck. And they go and they bring somebody back and they rescue the whole crew. Again, they don't lose a man. Still to today, no one has been able to do what he did, that route, even with the most advanced gear, even with the most advanced radio equipment. No one has been able to recreate that, what he did.
It's such, man, that book is so great. So I read that. Well, I read it at your recommendation before I did the Agogi. I read the book and I was
Yeah.
blown away with it. And then to your point, when I went and did that Agogi, I had, if I remember correctly, I told, or 15 guys said, yes, they were going to do it with me. 10 of them showed up, which I thought was actually pretty good numbers. I was like, if
That's a good
two-thirds,
number.
I thought it was going
Yeah.
to be less than that.
Yep.
And then I think 4 of us finished it. But I told everybody, and I think I had like 10,000 people in our Facebook group, and I told them
Wow.
I'm going to do this thing. And there are moments I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not doing this. And then I remembered, oh shit, I'm gonna have to tell those 10,000 people I just told I was gonna do this that I came back and didn't do it. But even more than that, it was my kids that I'd have to look my kids in the eye and say, hey, sorry guys, dad told you he was gonna get 60 hours and I only did, 43. Sorry. No way was that happening. None at all.
And there's nothing embarrassing about admitting that that's the reason you hung in there because that's the reason we all hang in when, look, we're not all out there on Shackleton's ship where if you give up, you die.
Right.
It's pretty easy to give up on the stuff we're talking about. There's no real consequence. But if the consequence is embarrassing, if the consequence is to your point that the kids look up to their dad in a different way, then it keeps you on track. It keeps you from tapping out. I would love it if you'd be willing. I would love it to round up a big crew, even though we might not have room. I'll figure it out. A big crew for Death Race this year. Why don't you become the leader? I'm going to throw this on your lap. I apologize.
You did this to me last time, so I figured it was coming.
You become the leader. You're coming to Death Race on the farm this summer. It's no charge. It's all on me. I'll give you 20 spots, and just see. It'll be an interesting experiment. Just see if you can get 20 people to commit to something like they've got enough time to train. You could even tell them, by the way, they only have to do a third of it. They don't even have to finish the whole thing, just a third.
And see if I can get those 20 guys. I'll see what I can
20.
do on that.
Yeah, see what you can do. 20 guys, it's on me. I'll feed you. I'll take care of you. I'll even help them get through a third. All they got to do is a third. And we could make a big announcement. They got through a third of it.
All right. I'll see what we can do on that.
Right.
But it leads me to think about the other thing is this concept of resilience, because I know you've talked about that. And it's interesting as I think about like the death race or the agoge, or even just, a Spartan race, a sprint, let's say, for example. We've bastardized, I think is the word you use, the term resilience. And everything is resilience now. Everything is tough. Like, oh, you went and did this workout. Oh, you're resilient, you're tough. Well, are you? I don't know if that's the measurement of it. And so you say true resilience. So what do you mean by that when you say that?
Well, when I think about resilience, it's more than just standing there and taking a pounding. And Shackleton was truly resilient. Sir Edmund Hillary is truly resilient. If you haven't watched yet, there's a show called 14 Peaks that documents a Gurkha, that became part of the SAS, is my understanding, and then went out to attack the 14 highest peaks in the world and did it in 7 months. The previous record was 16 years. So it's pretty unbelievable. True resilience. This guy,
yeah,
is tough as nails. It's pretty epic. I made my kids watch it actually this weekend. So it's the ability to take the pounding, right, and not quit when the easy way out is to quit. But it's also, and this is really important, it's also this ability to pivot and to bend, which is hard to do. And by the way, there's even times when you should quit, and people say, "Oh, come on, Joe, I can't believe you're using the word quit." Well, in the example of climbing a mountain, right? Like, let's talk about Everest. You and I are, let's just say, let's say I have no children and you have children. And let's say your goal in life is to be the greatest family man, greatest dad that ever lived. My goal in life is to be the greatest mountain climber that ever lived. And you and I are both climbing Everest. And we're 100 feet. We're 100 feet from the top and bad weather rolls in. And so it's risky. It's 50-50. We're going to make it back. Well, I would argue, since your core values are to be the greatest dad and greatest family man, you should not take that risk.
Right.
Me, on the other hand, I got my one window to set the world record mountain climbing. That's my lifelong dream. I probably go for it. So now the trick here is, because I've done this, I've had 10 million people do some Spartan race or Tough Mudder around the world, right? 10 million people. I've talked to 10,000 myself, one-on-one. The trick is your mind, going back to what we said earlier, where our species avoids discomfort, your mind is going to come up with bullshit excuses at that moment as to why we should quit. And you really have to pressure test it, because I've had people say, "Oh, you know what? It's just not important to me anymore." The fuck are you talking about? It's not important to you anymore. You trained for 8 months to come here and do this thing. All you're feeling is a little difficulty. You're cold, tired, and hungry right now. What are you talking about? If your mind says, "Look, it's risky, the bad weather is rolling in, I promised my wife," okay, that makes sense. But all the other excuses I've heard over the last 22 years of doing this, 99% of them are BS. And that's the true resilience test, is can you fight those crickets in your head when they're giving you a BS excuse as to why you should quit wrestling. You should give up, right? You haven't won a match in 2 years. And so what? So what? You got to lose a lot in life before. I mean, Thomas Edison couldn't figure out how to make a light bulb for 992 times.
How do you filter that though? Because in the moment, it does feel it feels very real, obviously, right? So, I'm thinking about this agoge. It's like, okay, there was time I remember, and even since, things that I've done where I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? And I can't really come up with any good reason.
Well, you got to write it down. You got to write it down, and you got to laminate it. Again, I'm doing this for other people for 22 years. Go back 30 years. I've been doing this stuff myself too, right? So you got to write it down. It's got to be almost laminated somewhere on your person, somewhere in your body, that you've got, what's the reason I'm doing this, right? What are my true values in life? Like, you've got these 3 statements there. Under what circumstances would I ever quit? And if there's a moment, and by the way, there's going to be like 11,000 moments in a death race or something hard like that, right? You just have to pull out that laminated piece of paper when your mind is not working clearly, and just read it and get back and put your head down. Now, I tell all these knuckleheads, I say, do you trust me? Just listen to what, like, I've been sleeping, I've been fed, my mind is clear, I don't have a dog in the fight. What I say right now will help you get through this. And 8 out of 10 times people will listen to me and put one foot in front of the other and continue on. But 2 out of 10 times they turn around, they quit, and they regret it. I've never had one instance. I've never had one instance where somebody didn't quit and then reach out to me, whether it's a day, a month, a year later, and say, "Oh my God, I'm so pissed. I should have listened to you."
Right. Yeah.
Because again, by the way, in the stuff you and I are talking about, it's never life and death. It's not like the example I gave on Mount Everest where there's a chance you don't come back, right? Yeah. This is just hard. And by the way, if we didn't get to a point in doing these hard things that we manufacture, these races, this crazy stuff, if we didn't get to hard where we want to quit, then we're doing something wrong. That's the whole reason we want to go to that place.
Well, and it changes you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to know in this relative ease of modernity how tough you actually are. Like everybody talks a big game. Like, oh, if I got into this altercation, here's what I would do. Or if I ever ran a marathon, here's how fast I would do it. Or if I ever went and did this thing, here's how I would deal with it. That sounds really good when you're in your air-conditioned house with all your creature comforts and your amenities and you're full and slept and everything else. But you don't actually really know until you're 60% into the thing. You're cold, tired, hungry, miserable, and your mind is playing tricks on you.
There's no doubt about it. You got, let's use the term. Let's agree on the term. You got a pressure test. We all need and by the way, pressure testing yourself once is not enough. I do it on a micro scale every morning when I get in that damn cold shower. It sucks, man. It never gets better,
Yeah, I do know, but I also like what you're talking about with this one foot in front of the other, and the whole concept that's been helpful to me anyways is, you can make that decision to quit after 10 more steps or after 2 more minutes. Like anybody can do anything for 2 minutes. Do it for 2 minutes and then make another determination as to whether or not you want to quit.
Yeah, I remember I had we have a lot of people that come up to the farm. They want to change their life, and so the first few days we just torture them just to get rid of them because most people, it's just a waste of our time. But there was this one guy who had a drinking issue, and he just wanted to clean up his life, and he stayed and he stayed and he stayed, and then I put him through the death race, and it was the year that I put together that barbed wire crawl that was 26.2 miles. And he was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 miles in. It was a hot day. It was hard. It would have been hard for you or I to stick it out. And it was a tough day. And he was just broken. He wasn't going to continue. And I tried to talk to him and I said, listen, I just need you to do another loop. Just do one more loop. And he did one more loop. Now I need you to do one more. And I eventually tapped out, only a year later to come back and say, hey, listen, I should have. Because you could always do it. You could always do the extra 2 minutes. You could always go more. And I've had so many examples where, a girlfriend or a parent or somebody else, oh my God, Joe, you're putting that person in danger. And it's like, are they pissing blood? If they're not pissing blood, they keep going. What are you talking about?
Well, but there's another side to this. You're putting these people in danger. Okay, well, consider the alternative. I would suggest that the alternative, doing nothing, getting fat, being lazy, being mediocre, not getting the promotion, not leading your family, is significantly more dangerous than these other things that you're talking about.
Choose your hard, right? I love that sentence.
Yes,
choose
right.
your hard, right? You want the hard right now, or do you want that hard to drag out for 80 years?
Right.
So listen, obviously I'm with you. I live this all day, every day. I fight everybody in my family on it. I fight everybody, my in-law, everybody, my company, yeah, I get it.
Well, Joe, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you got a hard stop, but guys, go pick up a copy of the book. It's called 10 Rules for Resilience, Mental Toughness for Families. I got a copy right here. Some of the other things that he goes through is you can't until you can, earn, not given, into the wild, raw courage. We talked about things like discipline breeds responsibility and living your values, but such a tremendous book. A lot of great information here. Joe, I appreciate all that you do. Sometimes when I'm in the midst of it, I don't appreciate it, but afterwards I sure as hell do. And glad we could have this conversation.
Yeah, anybody, by the way, thanks for having me. If anybody doesn't want to read the book, just get it and hold it over your head with your family for like 1 hour. Just straight arms over the
There
head.
you go. I
one
like
hour.
that. I like it. All right, brother. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate you. Keep fighting the good fight, and we got your back over here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.